Hi everybody. Today I'm going to talk to you about horses and how that connects with getting rid of layers. And we're going to start with me getting real, because I realized before I hit the record button, I took my Nani pillow and I covered up my box of masks and my mess, and I didn't want to sit this way and show you my shirt and stuff that I have lying out. So there you go. Getting real #1 for today. Wild horses have been in the news a lot lately, so it's always just so amazing to me that they are still even in our great country, and I just love it when we get to see them. One of the first videos, if not the first video, on Robert's personal channel is about a wild herd of horses that we saw our first time to camp here in Pahrump, which was 2 or 3 years ago, I think. And they're just so lovely. And we got to Pahrump our first night, set up camp way up in the hills, and we're sitting there, and it's dark by the time, I'm sorry, there is a truck that's stuck or something, I don't know, or an ATV, or, oh, it's a truck doing donuts out in the middle of the desert. People just irritate the padookie out of me. Sorry, see, getting real. But they do. I mean, it's like, why are you doing that? Tearing up vegetation and, you know, no respect whatsoever for our land. But anyway, back to the story of Robert and I sitting out at our campsite, and it had gotten dark by the time we got there and got camp set up. And we hear this clomp, 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 clomp. And look up, and this white horse is just looking at us and stands there for a moment and then goes on down the road. It was just one of those moments. It's like, oh my gosh. And then, so my glasses are still broken, by the way. I'll get them fixed. But anyway, so Robert and I just looked at each other and we just thought, oh my gosh, this is just heavenly. And that gave me, in the book, my new book, and if you guys don't have it, please get it. Please, please, please. You'll love it. I promise. In fact, if you don't, well, I can't say that because I have trolls that tell me they don't like my books. In fact, I already have a troll. I'll come back to why I showed you this in a minute. But I already have a troll, and I'll show you the email, but I'm going to black out her name. You know, she called, I guess because of my first video on here where I shared the wealth that I used to live in with you guys. You know, she calls me a lying so-and-so and says, you know, go blankety blank yourself. And it's just like, who does that? It's like, if you don't believe me, or if you've got something grudge against me, or you know, whatever, just move on down the road, turn your key, go on. Part of getting real, I guess. And I guess for her that felt real, but it's like there's so many layers and masks underneath that, and if you've got something, a beef, then get genuine, get authentic, get real, communicate. You don't have to act like that. Okay, so anyway, wild horses. So in my book, For the Love of Pearly, is based on that animal that we saw that night, that beautiful stallion. In the book, she's a mare, Pearly, but that stallion is from that first sighting for Robert and I, and then he saw that herd that's on his channel, and you guys go check that out. I think I'll put the link up here. Go check that out, and it's a beautiful video. And then I got to honor wild horses in my book, and I just enjoy them so much. And I got to thinking, every time I look at a wild herd of horses, or I'm around horses, I get really intimidated, inhibited, and I go back to the little girl that you saw in the thumbnail. That's me and my horse, Dan. His mother was Tony. And I'll tell you a little bit more about them on Getting Real today with Debra. One day at a time, one layer at a time. So obviously with that picture you can guess that I grew up on a farm, and I grew up on a farm most of the time because I don't know why. My mother, I guess, was attracted to ranchers and farmers, and that's who she mostly married. Like I told you before, every now and then she'd marry somebody with money, but and yes, she was married a lot, and that's her story. I won't go into it here. But we lived on a farm, and that was Dan, my horse, and was supposed to be my horse. Um, you know, I always tried my best to ride my best, and the stepfather I had at the time, you know, he would yank me off the saddle, just reach up, yank me off the saddle, and tell me how horrible of a rider I was, and that I was never going to get to have Dan, and it was just very, very traumatic. And he's the same stepfather. If you read my book Kaleidoscope 9, he's the same stepfather from my story in that, Sleeping in the Alley. That's actually a true story, word for word, actually happened. And I still know that the gentleman, he's older now, so I call him gentleman, but at the time he was a boy that brought me dinner on his bicycle. So that's a true story, and it's that stepfather. And so I always just never felt like I could get around horses. And every time I did, I would remember those memories. And I was riding one time, and, you know, all kinds of things happen when you grow up on farms and you ride horses. And now I know that, and I know it's just part of it. But at the time, I thought it was me. I was doing something wrong. So I was riding Tony, Dan's mother. And she was smart, and she took me under limbs, and whack, you know, off I go, rolling off the back of back of her. And then another time I was riding Tony, and because Dan wasn't broken yet, and wasn't able to ride him yet. And I got thrown off into the barbed wire fence because we came up on the fence and I didn't see it, and she did, and she stopped and turned, and then there I went flying right into the barbed wire fence. And so there was some legitimacy too, that I couldn't ride very good, but I was young, as y'all can tell from that picture, and that's just happens when you grow up on a farm, and that's what you're doing. And so anyway, so that was my early experience with my horses, and I loved them, but I shut all of that down because one night I snuck out of the house. Mom and Dad were fighting, and I don't call him Dad. I don't know why I just called him Dad. I never called him Dad. Anyway, his name was Dave. Mom and Dave were fighting. So I snuck out of the house, and I took an apple, and I went to go give it to Dan, and I don't remember what happened. I honestly don't remember what happened, but Dan caught his leg in a tree, in an apple tree the next day, and he broke his leg, and they put him down, and that I always blamed myself. I know that's silly today, but I took him an apple the night before, and he broke his leg in an apple tree the next day, in the fork of an apple tree. You know, he got his hoof caught in there. And so I carried that with me all those years. And then I was a house parent at Boysville in San Antonio for a while. It's a boys ranch, and I was a house parent there, and I finally got the nerve to go horseback riding one day, and the foreman of the ranch out there told me I could come on my day off and go out there and go horseback riding. And he hooked me up on the saddle and everything, and I hadn't been on a horse in you know, 15 years, 10, 15 years. And I got on that horse, and I had such a lovely ride around the arena, and then I took the saddle off and brushed him down, and it was such a lovely day. And I overheard that guy the next day telling somebody at lunch, because, you know, the staff all had lunch together, telling staff at lunch, you know, yeah, she can't ride worth crap. Talk about flashback. And so I hadn't been around horses again until I got with Robert's daughters, his daughter and his daughter-in-law. They both have a horse, and I couldn't hardly even pet the horses. You know, isn't that sad, and isn't that silly, what you bring with you from childhood and that stays with you? And, you know, I got to thinking about it years later, and that foreman wasn't bad-mouthing me. He didn't say anything about me personally negative. He just said she couldn't ride worth crap. He was right. I was bouncing in the saddle. I didn't even remember how to hold my knees, and he wasn't you know, if I'd have stopped, if I could be genuine like I am today, with that mask off, with the layers off, and I don't remember his name, let's say Bud, just because I can't remember his name. If I could have said, oh, Bud, I just heard what you said. It was pretty bad, wasn't it? You know, that man was of the caliber. He would have probably laughed and go, yeah, it was. You know, you ought to come out more often and I'll help you. We can take care of that. But I carried all that shame and everything with me from all those years before. So I'm going to make a public declaration here, and I'm going to cry doing it. How silly is the stuff that we bring with us? So I want to ride. I want to ride a horse again. That's going to be one of my new bucket lists. I can't do maybe some of the sights and stuff that I used to do. You guys saw my Zion National Park video. I can't do the crowds and everything anymore, but I know that there are places where you can go and they'll take you even on trails and stuff. You know, and I'll just tell them up front, I suck as a rider. So give me a gentle horse and keep an eye out for me and teach me. And I want to do that. I want to go on a trail ride, and I think I can do that. So that's it, everybody. That's my mask for today. That's my taking off the layers and being courageous. What is something that you want to do that you've shied away from? And let's take these layers off together. Thanks for being here. We'll see you down the road.